The chill of the wind whistled through the narrow streets of Gondla, a forgotten village at the snow-capped Himalayas. Time appeared to have been frozen in this old settlement, its heart an ancient clock tower standing tall at the village square. The hands of the clock have been still and dead for centuries, under pale moonlight casting long shadows. Jagjit Singh, the village historian, looked out of his frosted window at the tower. Something was not right about that night. "Have you ever wondered why the clock stopped, Harpreet?" he asked, turning to his cousin, who had come to join him for tea. "A betrayal, bloodshed, and the ticking ceased forever," Harpreet replied, his voice low. "Legends say it stopped when the Maharaja cursed it." A loud clang shattered the eerie silence. The two men froze, their eyes locking. Slowly, they turned towards the clock tower. The clock had started ticking. The next morning, a crowd gathered around the clock tower. Jagjit, Harpreet, and Mandeep, the village priest, were at the forefront, staring at the now moving hands. "This is an omen," Mandeep muttered, clutching his prayer beads. "A sign of something terrible." Kirandeep Kaur, the village schoolteacher, disagreed. "It's mechanical," she said, although her voice betrayed unease. "There must be a logical explanation." Balwinder Singh, the blacksmith, approached the tower cautiously, his hammer in hand. "I'll check inside," he offered, though his trembling hands betrayed his bravery. The villagers watched as Balwinder pushed open the heavy door of the clock tower. A gust of icy air burst forth, carrying with it an eerie whisper. "Return what was taken." Balwinder took a step back, his face pale. "There's something inside," he stammered, "and it's angry." Silence seemed to reverberate through the empty square as Balwinder's voice trembled. Jagjit walked forward, still determined to unlock the mystery. "We cannot let fear conquer us," he said with resolve, though his heart was pounding. Amarjit Kaur, the village healer, touched his shoulder. "Beware, Jagjit. Legends speak of an awful doom awaiting anyone who attempts to disturb the clock tower." Ignoring her warning, Jagjit led a small group, Harpreet, Kirandeep Kaur, and Balwinder, inside the tower. The air grew colder with each step, the darkness pressing against them like a living thing. In the faint light of their lanterns, they found a spiral staircase that twisted up, iron steps encased in frost. At the top, they found a heavy door carved with ancient symbols. The whispers returned, louder now. "Return it, before it's too late." Harpreet hesitated. What could it mean? Jagjit reached for the door, his hand shaking. The group gasped as it creaked open. Inside was a room filled with relics, golden artifacts, jeweled crowns, and ancient scrolls. In the center of it all was a glass case holding a small, blood-stained dagger. "The Maharaja's dagger," Kirandeep whispered. Suddenly, the whispers turned into an agonized scream, and the glass shattered. The group staggered out of the room, grasping the dagger. Outside, Navyot Kaur, the village seamstress, stood waiting anxiously. "What happened?" she cried. "The clock, it's cursed," Harpreet stammered, his face pale. "This dagger is connected to its mystery." Mandeep, now carrying his sacred texts, stepped forward. "The Maharaja's betrayal, the dagger, it was used to kill his own kin." That's when the clock stopped. Suddenly, the clock struck midnight. The bells rang out, shaking the ground. Shadows emerged from the tower, twisting and writhing. The villagers screamed as the shadows formed the shape of a man, tall, imposing, and cloaked in darkness. His voice boomed, "Return my dagger, or face eternal torment." The shadowy figure stepped closer, its eyes glowing red. "You have disturbed my slumber," it growled. Jagjit brandished the knife. "We didn't mean to. Teach us how to put it right." The darkness hesitated, its edges wavering. "The knife must be returned to its resting place. The Maharaja's tomb," it said, pointing out towards the mountains. "Fail, and the village will be lost." As the villagers spoke among themselves in terror, Amarjit Kaur stepped forward. "We can do it. We can't let the curse consume us." With the clock ticking on in the background, Jagjit, Harpreet, Kirandeep, and Amarjit prepared to embark on their dangerous journey to the Maharaja's tomb. The shadow observed them, and its voice echoed in the air. "Beware the trials ahead." The group left before the break of dawn, the blood-stained dagger wrapped and taken by Jagjit. The villagers kept silent as the four figures vanished into the dense forest at the edge of the village. The path to the Maharaja's tomb was treacherous, winding through dense woods and icy cliffs. Snow began to fall, blanketing the forest in eerie silence. Harpreet kept glancing behind, his unease growing with every step. "Stop looking back," Kirandeep said sharply. "Whatever follows us thrives on fear." They pressed on until Amarjit paused abruptly. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The others froze, straining to listen. A faint melody drifted through the trees, a haunting tune played on a flute. Harpreet shivered. "That's the Maharaja's song," he muttered. The shadows around them started moving, shaping figures with glowing eyes. They huddled together, and the sound of the tune grew louder and louder. "Keep walking," Jagjit ordered. "Do not stop for anything." The melody became unbearable, worming its way into their minds. Harpreet dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "I can't. It's inside my head," he screamed. From the mist, a figure emerged, a tall man dressed in royal attire, playing a silver flute. His face was hidden beneath a jeweled mask, but his eyes burned with malice. "It's him," Amarjit whispered, her voice trembling. "The Maharaja's piper!" The piper pointed his flute at them and the shadows lunged. Kirandeep quickly recited a prayer she'd learned as a child. The shadows recoiled, hissing as if it burned them in return. Jagjit grabbed Harpreet, pulling him up. "Run!" he shouted. The group ran, the piper's melody chasing after them. They did not desist till they attained the edge of the forest where the music stopped at once. Jagjit wheeled about, his breath squeezing out of his chest. The piper was gone, but the cold, misty breath of his melody remained in air. The wide chasm lay before them. The depths of its bottom were veiled with wreaths of swirling mist. A glittering bridge of ice spanned the gap, its surface glistening perilously under the pale sunlight. "This must be it," Kirandeep said, stepping cautiously onto the bridge. "But it's too fragile." A deep, guttural laugh echoed from the chasm. The group froze as a monstrous figure emerged from the mist below, a serpent made of ice, its eyes glowing blue. "You dare cross my domain?" the serpent hissed, its voice like shattering glass. "Prove your worth or fall to your doom." The serpent lunged, its icy body coiling around the bridge. Jagjit raised the dagger, its blade gleaming red. "This is what you fear, isn't it?" he shouted. The serpent recoiled with a roar, the bridge trembling beneath their feet. "Go!" Amarjit cried, leading the group as they sprinted across the fragile ice. On the other side of the chasm, the group collapsed, their breaths visible in the freezing air. The serpent's roar faded into the distance, but the ground beneath them seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. "We're close," Amarjit said, pointing to a jagged mountain peak in the distance. At its base, half buried in snow, loomed a massive stone doorway. Ancient carvings of warriors, battles, and a royal figure holding a dagger adorned its surface. Jagjit examined the carvings. "The Maharaja's tomb," he murmured. "The dagger must be returned here." As they approached the doorway, the ground trembled and the air grew thick with whispers. A low, menacing voice echoed, "Who dares disturb my sanctuary?" The doorway began to creak open, revealing a dark passage lit by flickering blue flames. Kirandeep shivered. "We're not welcome here." Jagjit held up the dagger. "We have no choice. This ends now." The group entered the tomb, and the walls had eerie murals of the rise and betrayal of the Maharaja. The dancing shadows cast by the blue flames seemed to be following their every step. "This place feels alive," Harpreet whispered low. A gust of wind extinguished the flames and plunged them into darkness. Amarjeet screamed as ghostly hands reached out from the walls to claw at her. "Light the lanterns!" Jagjit shouted, slashing at the shadows with the dagger. The blade emitted a faint glow, pushing the specters back. The flames reignited, revealing a massive chamber ahead. At its center stood a sarcophagus, its lid adorned with a golden effigy of the Maharaja. Around it were scattered bones, rusted weapons, and broken jewels. Kirandeep stepped forward. "This is where it ends," she declared, her voice firm. But just as she touched the sarcophagus, the ground gave way, and the Maharaja's shadowy figure rose up from the darkness. "You cannot undo what was done," he bellowed, his voice rattling the chamber. The Maharaja's shadow towered above them, his crimson eyes burning with malevolent intent. "You mortals dare to enter my tomb?" he spat. Jagjit stepped forward, holding the dagger aloft. "We're here to end the curse. Tell us how to make amends." The shadow laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. "Amends? There is no amends for betrayal. Return the dagger, and I will decide your fate." Amarjeet hesitated. "What betrayal? Why were you cursed?" His face was flickered by the shadow, but with that came a flash of humanity. "My own blood turned against me," he growled. "They stole my throne, used this dagger to end my life, and sealed me in this tomb." "Then this dagger is the key to your freedom," Kirandeep said. "But what happens if we return it?" The shadow's smile ran down their spines, causing chills. "You will see." Jagjit hesitated, the dagger heavy in his hand. "What happens if we give this back?" he asked, his voice unsteady. The Maharaja's shadow circled them, his presence suffocating. "The curse binds me here, and it binds your village to its fate. Return the dagger, and the chains will be broken, for me and for you." Harpreet whispered, "What if he's lying? What if giving it back only strengthens him?" Amarjeet had not even had a chance to reply when the tomb began to shake. Cracks formed along its walls, and spectral figures poured in. Soldiers, villagers, and nobles, all with hollow, lifeless eyes. "These are the ones who betrayed me," the Maharaja growled. "They too seek freedom." Amarjeet stepped forward. "If we return the dagger, what becomes of them?" "They will rest," the shadow said. "But one of you must pay in blood to forever seal the curse." There was silence, but the people passed fidgety glances at each other. "No one's dying here," Jagjit proclaimed, clutching the dagger even tighter. The Maharaja's guffawing laughter was resounding throughout the chamber. "Then you seal your village's fate." Amarjeet stepped forward from the rest towards the sarcophagus, a stubborn look set in her face. "If somebody has to lose, then me." "Amarjeet, no!" Kirandeep exclaimed, catching hold of her arm. "You heard him," Amarjeet whispered. "This curse will never end unless someone offers his life. I will not let the village suffer." Before anyone could stop her, she reached for the sarcophagus and thrust the dagger into its golden effigy. The earth shook violently, and the shadowy soldiers screamed as they dissolved into mist. The Maharaja's shadow began to fade. "You have honored your word," he said, his voice softer now. "The curse is lifted." Amarjeet's body glowed with a blinding light as the energy of the dagger consumed her. Silence fell on the chamber. The oppressive atmosphere was lifted. The villagers' spirits dissipated, their whispers of gratitude lingering in the air. Amarjeet's lifeless body lay crumpled on the ground next to the sarcophagus. Her sacrifice went into the hearts of those people who were there. Jagjit knelt by her side. Tears were trickling down his face. "She saved us all," Kirandeep said, her voice trembling. The group carries Amarjeet out of the tomb. Emerging into the light of the sun, the long frozen clock tower in the village struck 12, its hands moving for the first time in centuries. The villagers started to gather around with mixed feelings of relief and grief. Balwinder glanced at the clock and asked, "The curse is broken. But what's the cost?" Jagjit looked back at the mountain where the tomb's entrance closed up into itself and disappeared in the snow. Weeks became days, and the village healed a little more with each passing day. The clock tower, which was once the mark of fear, now counted days and nights without a glitch. But something remained. People began to claim they heard distant whispers around the tower at night, voices that were calling for Amarjeet. One evening, Jagjit stood before the clock, his eyes fixed on its gilded face. The square was buffeted by a chilling wind and carried the piper's tune into it. A faint figure came behind him, Amarjeet, with glowing eyes filled with sorrow. "The curse is broken," she whispered. "But some doors should never be opened." Before Jagjit could speak, the clock struck midnight. The hands halted and the air became frozen. The shadows returned, swirling around the tower, their whispers louder than ever. The villagers screamed as the clock began to tick backward. The frozen clock has rung its last knell, but has the curse finally ended? What lies ahead for the village? And is it ever a good idea to leave some things unsolved? If you love this chilling story, make sure to like this video, leave your comments in the box below, and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling and spine-tingling stories. Next up, the next great dark adventure.